You're a big supporter of the ID cards.
I am.
When they were first introduced under Labour government, you were one of the very first to get one, and I believe you might have it with you here now.
My early adopter
There we
card
go.
back in 2010, and I've always thought that in the age we live in, and this is going back some years now, but it's become even more important, not just in terms of the migration issue around identity, but also, you know, fraud in our public services, whether it's, you know, the NHS or, for that matter, our benefit system. But more genuinely, I think people are needing ID cards more than ever today to certify who they are. Driving licences with the photo on it actually was introduced by John Major as a precursor to an ID card. Young people, you were saying, Kate, earlier, you know, having their age verified as well. So I think if they can use the best digital technology to deploy this in a way that can work for people, it doesn't mean you can't act on enforcement. You're still going to have to do that if employers are employing people and on the black economy. But I think it's a good idea. It was a good idea, you know, in 2010, and it's still a good idea today. And it's a shame that the Liberals and the Conservatives stopped the programme.
Well, it's not just those that are against it, though, isn't it? Nigel Farage, who, considering one of the sort of angles that this has been sold under is knowing who is coming into the country and controlling that and making sure we understand. I think we've got his speech. Oh, I've just been told that we haven't got the SOTs, so there we go. But what he said is, I can see no way at all that this will in any way help control illegal immigration. It's just about controlling of big government. What do you think about that, Salma?
Many years ago, when this was first introduced, I probably would have been on that side of that argument. But actually, having been inside government and looked at what are the benefits of having a digital biometric ID, I think I've definitely moved position and am supportive of them. Not, you know, without any thought on the rights around ID cards or the use around ID cards. And I think this is not a black and white conversation about how government has your data. It is really about how the individual can benefit from having a digital ID. So I sort of dislike the way that it's been presented as just a solution to make a hostile environment for immigrants, illegal immigrants, in terms of employment. This has other benefits to individuals. I mean, imagine if you could get your health record where you don't have to repeat the same conversation to several different agencies, and actually there's a biometric ID with maybe one record that sits behind it that all the services have access to. That is a future use for a biometric ID.
Well, I'm going to... could you mind if we brought Dr. Amir in here? Because one of the things that could be positive, as Salma said that, is anybody who's had the frustration of dealing with different sections of the NHS and the hospitals and doctors saying, oh, I'm so sorry, we haven't got that. That was a different hospital. You have to apply to that because of data protection. We can't necessarily coordinate it up. Seeing some kind of coordination of information simply that a doctor in an emergency can look and know, could that be a positive?
I think having coordinated IT systems within the NHS that interface with each other, I think that is really important and something we need to look towards. Whether that's linked to the ID card is slightly different. We should be able to put in someone's date of birth, name or NHS number into a computer system that we all have in our GP surgeries or in the hospitals, and that should bring up that data.
But it doesn't because of data protection.
But I'm not sure how this ID card will change that. So I'm not sure how the two of them are linked. There's talks that this won't be linked to the NHS. That's what's branded out. You know, it won't be used as an ID for the NHS, but it could be in the future, and it may help us identify people who are entitled to NHS care and those who are not. As a doctor, that does fill me with a little bit of dread because I'm very much, you know, patient first and the need first, and health tourism within the NHS, where people who are not entitled come in, costs the NHS about 0.2%, 0.3% of the budget. So it's not a huge cost to the NHS, though every penny needs to be saved.
And how does tech go down in your world? Because I imagine some people, vulnerable people, older people, people with very busy lives at the moment, you've got to go online, sometimes just even book an appointment. You know, you need your NHS app, your COVID app. I remember the times of COVID, sometimes you need that. Do you think that there'll be some people that will struggle to adapt to a digital situation here, a digital card?
Oh, very much so. We're already seeing that with people who aren't IT savvy, elderly people, or people who don't have smartphones. Those people still exist. So we're already seeing that when we say, no, well, you'll have to book online. You can't phone, you can't come into the surgery, you'll have to book online. So there has to be a way to manage that group of people as well. And this could be a problem for them.
I mean, the problem is, I know both of you are in support of this. The problem is government doesn't have a brilliant record on introducing
No, it's true.
functional tech. And I think for those that have seen, you know, various things be introduced that were supposed to make life simpler, cost a fortune and then ultimately not deliver, it just feels like, oh, is this just a way of controlling us? I mean, it's absolutely overwhelming how many people don't want this already. We're only, you know, 40 minutes into the show, but they don't like the idea of it.
I think you've got to give it a chance because when you say something like this immediately, of course people are going to be worried about it. But if you have a smartphone, and a lot of people do, think about the kind of information that big tech companies have on you and the kind of data that has.
Well, people aren't very comfortable about that either.
That's right, they're not comfortable. But what I'm saying is there is a norm and there are protections around that sort of use and what you can actually access and the kind of legal governance that sits around it. So there are protections there. And we have to make sure that if it's introduced, that those things are really important. But there's one other element of it that is really critical, is that this technology has advanced amazingly, and it's the private sector that is driving this technology.
Right.
It's not just the government that's sitting by itself thinking about how to do this. We're in a completely different world from where we had it when it first came out.
I think, to your point about, and Dr. Amir's point about people who might... I understand the government is saying for those people who would rather have a card like I had back in 2010, that will be available as well. So I think that's a transition issue. But we do have to think about the future and future-proofing how we go about accessing safe access, easy access people to a huge amount of services that we need every day, whether it's in link to our passports, or our health, our benefits, our pensions, our driving licences, that if that can be put together. But I think the point here is, how are they going to deploy this? How are they going to do that? And I think that's where we should be having the discussion. I think a majority of the public pretty much are in support of digital ID cards, but we have to convince them that the government can actually oversee and deliver what would be a mammoth project.
But also, you have to... We can't... Look, neither of us can say, here's the truth around who's going to governance this. Those are really important scrutiny questions that need to be asked. And if there was a line that we had to cross where we were just taking it on trust with politicians. You know, I would be worried that someone's going to switch off my access to the NHS because I've said something on GMB that's upset some politician somewhere.
You would never do that.
There is a freedom question here, and we do have to address
And also,
that.
it's open to hackers. I mean, we're talking about hacking all the time.
I mean, yes, so yesterday
that's
we were
the other
talking...
concern, isn't it?
Today we were Land Rover, weren't we? And today we've got the latest one is this group of nurseries, Kiddo Nurseries, some 18 nurseries, extraordinary. They've stolen pictures, names and addresses of around 8,000 children, seemingly to try and extort money. I mean, the whole sort of dynamic of fear on one hand, of everything that's existing online and what it's being done with it and how it's being used, combined to a government saying, this is going to be a good thing. You can see why people feel a dilemma.
I understand that. I think actually parts of the private sector and, you know, you've got large firms like Jaguar Land Rover, John Lewis and others, M&S and Co-op, and now this nursery chain, there clearly is some issues there, even in, you know, very big corporate companies that have huge profits and what have you. Maybe they need to look at their cybersecurity being amongst their
What
top
as a nation,
risks.
do you wonder if we've just not got across it?
I think that is absolutely true. And I've looked at some of these issues in another part of my life, and I am really surprised that the government hasn't mandated a level of cybersecurity or cyber insurance. So there are different categories that, you know, you can get companies in to come and assess your cybersecurity levels. And it is not, you know, in the same way that you would buy a fire insurance, house insurance, car insurance. And we don't have an assessment for our cybersecurity. So we are basically allowing ourselves, because there is no government mandate, and I know that some government agencies have done a little bit to educate people, but actually not enough, and this is a result of that.
Just want to come back to Armo before we move on from the whole digital ID cards. Think about hacking. Hacking is possible because we are so reliant on tech and our phones. Are you concerned that this is another reason, like Kate made the point earlier, she occasionally makes a really good point on the show. She absolutely nailed it. Once a decade.
Once a decade,
you can take early retirement now.
I'll relax now.
But no, the fact that it's just another reason, and probably the most important reason, why we're all going to have to carry our mobile phones around. That reliance on digital, really, you talk about this a lot.
Health.
How it's going to affect our mental health already.
I've been really trying to listen to you, Dr. Amir, and have an hour, if I can manage it, or at least some time a day where I'm taking a walk in nature, where I'm not having a buzz, and I'm just thinking I'm stopping that and I'm being in the real world.
Yeah.
And this feels like increasing more pressure to not live like that.
You know, there's GDPR concerns, obviously, as a doctor, and the health record on a phone, there's always those concerns. But in terms of health, yes, time off your phone, that reliance on screens and digital things is important, particularly first thing in the morning. When you get up in the morning, we all reach to our phone, for our phones. The light, the cortisol levels that causes, the stress, really puts you on the back foot mentally.
But it is our office. It's the way everybody contacts with us. It's the way we look at finances, the way we manage bills. So it's sort of like waking up in the morning and checking in with the day now.
But that is not...
I know it's not good, but this feels like more of that.
But it's not how we're wired either.
No,
So in terms of how our bodies are supposed to respond to the morning, it's supposed to be a slow 30-minute kind of get up, have a glass of water, kind of immerse yourself in something fairly relaxing to get up before you reach for your phone. Same towards bedtime. You shouldn't be doing it at bedtime either. So I think all of this reliance on our phone is worrying from a health point of view, from our brain structure, neurochemical point of view, is getting increasingly worse.
I have a phone prison.
Do you?
And basically, it's a gadget where my husband and I have been using for about a month or so now, where we just, certain times of day, we put it into this box and there's a timer on it, and then it only opens when the timer finishes. And it's been quite good. We've managed to watch a film all the way through without checking out the active file.
What if there's an emergency? Suddenly you've got to make
What if you've got to access your digital ID?
Well, there is an emergency release on the box, so you have to be a bit disciplined about it. But psychologically, just putting it in that box.
Right.
But you can open it.
Found it worked. In an emergency, there's always a get out. And these things.
You've got to smash it, though.
You know. That's what the hammer's for, you know. Oh, God.
Caroline, it's all right. I've got another phone under the sofa. Husband doesn't know about this one.
No, we actually have got a landline.
Oh, hello.
We're still retro.
Is it one of those old phones that you have to sort of rotary dial?
No, I love those. They're coming back in. You can buy
They're very trendy.
Let's move on.
251. That's what they like. It's like a Miss Marple thing, isn't it?
We've lost all the kids watching. They've gone, what are they on about?
Right, shall we talk a bit more politics? So Sir Keir Starmer has written in The Telegraph today about all sorts of things. And one of the interesting... Well, first of all, I'm sure you've read it and be interested to know what you think about it. And it feels like it's going to be this big speech he's making today in central London. The use of this, what is it called? Patriotic
something.
Patriotic renewal.
That's it, patriotic renewal,
/ uncatchy title.
Yeah.
It feels like it's using very specific words to try and haul people back away from reform and into his version of what patriotism means.
Well, I think he's absolutely right to address that there are a number of voters, and a lot of Labour voters at the last election as well, who have been attracted to reform. And therefore, in some ways, he has to tackle why that is the case and how you can actually find a way to get those people back to Labour, and for those people who've never voted Labour, voting Labour. Now, I think what's interesting is how he's defined patriotism in a different way. A patriotism which is actually where we all come together as a nation on certain occasions, which we still do, but also a patriotism is about hope for the future, rather than what can be sometimes an empty popularism, which is always about division, we're no good, nothing's going to get better, everything's going to hell in a handcart and all this type of thing. And I think it's good for him to actually, you know, see that there is, you can be, you know, a patriot is about actually, yes, dealing with the issues that people are concerned about, but at the same time, actually, we can do things together as a country. We can be proud of what we've done. It's not all bad, and actually we can work together. And I think that creates it speaks to those people who have concerns, but it takes us away from constantly the negativity that often is a product of the sort of populism we've seen on our streets.
Yeah, in a way, this is a response, isn't it, to the recent protests we've seen and the populism on the streets, the raising of the flags. But it is still that line about the concerns. And there are some people who think, well, is he going far enough? Because those protests saw attacks on Muslims, verbal attacks, and we've seen since violent attacks, anti-Semitic attacks. I mean, these are horrible, nasty things on those streets by lots of people. I mean, the whole protest was run by somebody who's known to be an extremist, Tommy Robinson. He doesn't address any of those. So if I'm a Muslim at home right now, I'm going, there's been a build-up to this. Well, God, Starmer's going to address this. What's he going to say? His narrative, there might be some credence in that about the genuine concerns, but is he going far enough, Caroline? Are people going, yes, finally, somebody's standing up for me as a person of colour, as a Muslim, because what I've seen in 100,000 people rioting or protesting across the streets of Britain?
Well, I actually think he did act quickly. Obviously, we've had recent protests, but in that first summer of the Labour government, you know, when there were riots on the streets then, the police had the full backing of the government to go in there and deal with it, where people were violent, where people were stealing, where people were causing criminal damage. He has done that. And he's made it clear, I think, in the article, and we'll wait to hear some more next week at the Labour Hike Conference. Yeah. He has said that, you know, he's called out those who just want to drive division. And he said, I've got no truck with those people out, being violent against other groups and people in our community, causing damage, causing unrest, causing fear. But I think at the same time, you know, there is quite a broad cross-section of people, I would say, in this country from all sorts of backgrounds, not just those who are going on some of these marches, but some of them who've gone along, maybe not signing up to the Tommy Robinson, but have some concerns from all sorts of backgrounds and ethnic groups who do have concerns about immigration and controls, and they want it fixed and they want something done. And that's why I have to say it is good that he's also said that Labour for too long has tended to not listen. And if you're not listening, someone else is going to fill the vacuum and come up with ideas that are not going to take our country
I have a slight issue with that. We say, well, some of the, you know, they've got concerns. I mean, if it was on the other side, if there was somebody who's known as a Muslim extremist holding a protest, you know, we wouldn't turn around and say, well, the vast majority of people who had joined that protest were there because they were unhappy with the government and they had genuine concerns. We'd be really concerned that a Muslim extremist has held a protest and 100,000 people have gone to it. I mean, we would be looking to ban those kind of protests. But instead, here, we say, well, there's genuine concerns.
Well, there were arrests made the other week and the police were out in full force. And I'm not sure, I mean, I'm not sure if I've heard the vast majority of people on that march, you know...
we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah. I can't really say that. All I do know is that all polling of the British public, you know, across different groups, across Liberals, across Tories, across Labour, is showing that it's up there as one of the #1 issues in the top 3, along with health, along with the economy. And to be honest, that's been the same for 20, 30 years. And we haven't dealt with things like getting a grip on certain situations. Some of the discussion around our immigration and how it works, you know, we should have been sorting out.
Well, he's got a job on his hands, hasn't he, Kate?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, you know, funnily enough, this morning, the YouGov poll, it's the first MRP of this new parliament, so, you know, they would have done the research sort of around about the year. It says that when they ask people who would they vote for, well, it's huge support for reform. So if an election were held tomorrow, the central projection estimates that Labour would not only lose their majority, falling to 178 seats, but would become second party by some distance in a hung parliament, in which Reform UK would be the largest force. And I suppose it is good that the concerns are being acknowledged, people would say, by Sir Keir Starmer, and these issues are being addressed. However, when you see figures like that, people might wonder if it's happening because of a political pressure for reform in both parties, Salma.
Yeah, that's true. But we don't know whether the people who want to vote reform in that MRP poll are doing it purely on migration. It could be a whole number of things. It could be about the economy.
But that is the thing that they have nailed their mast to, haven't they?
But
so therefore,
there's an old adage that says people don't win elections, governments lose them. And I think that is also true in this case, is that actually what are you failing at that has made people so upset? Because actually, if you're doing a really great job, and arguably in politics nobody ever can. But if you're doing a really great job, then actually people aren't looking elsewhere. So it's not just this idea that you have to ape reform in order to win back that support.
Is it a concern, that Salma, that, I mean, this is an extraordinary poll, and people were asked literally the question, who would you vote for? And just in recent weeks, Nigel Farage has talked about mass deportations, wasn't clear enough on whether paracetamol is a contributor to autism. He couldn't rule that out. He's then come out with this bizarre thing that some people are eating swans. You know, these are ridiculous things he comes out with. He says that Sharia law does exist with some people in the country, and his evidence is a taxi driver in Buckinghamshire told him it. These are quite ridiculous, quacky things that he's coming out with, yet he leads the polls. Why is that? What's going on?
Well, I think that largely we do give reform a lot of airtime, and their scrutiny perhaps isn't as stringent as it is for others. And that may be because actually they're just a parliamentary party of 5 people, so they can't actually affect change. But they are, as you say, really, really high in the polls, and they're climbing in the polls. And so there has to be that scrutiny, because you're right. You know, am I going to be deported under a reform government, even though I was born here and hold a British passport? Like, what are those questions? And how does that actually impact someone like me, who is a Conservative and a patriot? And so when I hear Keir Starmer, you know, wrapping himself in the flag, does that include people like me who, you know, has made a contribution and whose family has made a contribution? And
to be fair, when you read the article, he is saying that is exactly what I want, but it's whether it's read as that. Dr. Bear, I'm interested to know what you feel. You know, when he talks in the Telegraph today, and we assume this is going to crop up from Sunday in the Labour Party conference a lot as well, that sense of sort of division and fear, do you see that in your surgery? Do you see it where you live? Because I know you live in a very mixed community area.
Well, I certainly work in a very mixed community area.
Yeah, work, sorry.
And I do see it, you know. I drive into work, we see the flags, and, you know, the flags themselves obviously don't represent division, they represent the country, but the intent behind them might be very different, and sometimes that can make me feel uneasy. Within my community and where I work, I see huge swathes of people from different backgrounds, and what I actually see on ground level, I'll be honest with you, is community. I don't, you know, nobody's ever come up to me and talked about division or made me feel unwelcome. And I've got to say that, even though sometimes when I see the videos online, that can make me feel unwelcome and at risk. But I think this idea of getting back to the community, working together, is so important. And I think that's been lost. It's been lost in these divisions. It's been lost with the digital age as well. You know, people from all different backgrounds coming together. And for me, patriotism is about working in the NHS. It's about bringing these communities together. But it's also about other things. If you really care about the country, what are you doing for it? Where are you volunteering? What are you doing for your local library, your local youth centre? What are you doing for the environment around you? Those kind of things are the questions that I think of when I think of patriotism.
OK. Well, excellent. You know, we've got loads of health stories that we didn't get to with you, but your contributions were fabulous.
Thank you.
As always.
And Farage is wrong on paracetamol, as is President Trump.
Yes.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, absolutely.
But in the break, I've got a rash that I need you to look at in the green room, if that's all right.
It's business as usual for you, Dr. Amir. Business
You
as
should have
usual.
gone private, look.
Go and get your rash checked and come back later, Salma. And you, Caroline, as well. Thank you very much indeed to all 3 of you.